Hello and welcome to Future Forward, the podcast where we explore the trends, technologies, and ideas shaping our world. I'm your host, Dr. Anya Sharma. Today, we're tackling a topic that is fundamental to our society, our economy, and the very future of our children, education. But we're not just talking about it in the abstract. We are setting our sights on the very near future. What will education look like in 2025? The last few years have been a catalyst, a forced experiment that has accelerated changes that were once decades away. We've seen the challenges and the opportunities. Now, as we look to 2025, we're not just talking about recovery, we're talking about reinvention. To help us navigate this complex landscape, I'm joined by a panel of brilliant minds. First, we have Ben Carter, the CEO of the pioneering edtech company Innovate Learning.
Thanks for having me, Anya. It's a critical conversation. I'm excited to dive in.
We're also joined by Maria Flores. Maria is a professor of education and spent 2 decades in the K-12 classroom. She brings a vital, on-the-ground perspective to our discussion.
Thank you, Anya. I'm happy to be here to ensure we keep the student and the teacher at the heart of this future.
And rounding out our panel is David Chen, a futurist and policy advisor whose work focuses on the future of work. David helps governments and corporations understand the skills we'll need tomorrow.
Great to be here, Anya. Education is the supply chain for the future workforce, so this is a topic I'm passionate about.
Fantastic. So let's set the stage. 2025 is just around the corner. David, I want to start with you. From a macro societal perspective, why is the conversation about education in 2025 so urgent? What are the big drivers of this change?
The urgency comes from a perfect storm, really. The first and most obvious driver is the rapid acceleration of technology, particularly automation and AI. The World Economic Forum has been saying for years that the skills that make us uniquely human, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, emotional intelligence, will be the most valuable. In 2025, this isn't a future prediction anymore. It's the present reality. Repetitive, knowledge-based tasks are increasingly automated, so an education system built solely on memorization and standardized testing is preparing students for jobs that are quickly disappearing. The second driver is what I call the Great Adaptation following the pandemic. It exposed the brittleness of our traditional place-based education model, but it also proved that change, even at a massive scale, is possible. It forced a global crash course in digital literacy for students, teachers, and parents. Now, we can't unlearn those lessons. The expectation for flexibility and digital integration is here to stay.
Maria, you've lived this from the teacher perspective. How did that great adaptation, as David calls it, feel from the inside? And how has it reshaped the mindset of educators looking towards 2025?
That's a great question. In a word, it was brutal. But it was also transformative. For decades, teachers have been asking for smaller class sizes, more personalized approaches, and more trust. The pandemic, in a strange way, forced some of that. Suddenly, we had to connect with students one-on-one through a screen. We saw into their homes. We understood their individual struggles in a new way. Looking to 2025, the mindset has shifted from, how do I deliver this curriculum to 30 students at once, to how do I facilitate the learning journey for 30 individuals? The focus is moving away from the delivery of information and towards the cultivation of skills and well-being. Teachers are now more open to technology, not as a replacement, but as a tool to help them do what they do best, connect with and inspire students. However, I must add, they are also exhausted. Any vision for 2025 must include robust support and professional development for our educators, or it will fail.
That's a crucial point about support. Ben, let's bring you in. You're building the tools that will power this new reality. When you think of a 2025 classroom, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Is it students in VR headsets? Is it AI tutors? Paint us a picture.
It's all of that, but perhaps in a more integrated, less sci-fi way than people imagine. The keyword for 2025 is blended. It's not a fully virtual world, and it's not the old school classroom. It's a seamless blend of the physical and digital worlds. So picture this, a middle school science class. The teacher, let's call her Ms. Davis, starts the lesson not with a lecture, but with a question. How do ecosystems adapt to climate change? Instead of just reading a textbook, students put on lightweight AR glasses. Looking at a blank wall, they now see a dynamic 3D model of the Amazon rainforest. They can walk around it, they can fast forward time to see the effects of deforestation. Then they break into smaller groups. One group uses their tablets to access real-time data from scientific sensors in the actual Amazon. Another group collaborates on a digital whiteboard to design a reforestation plan. A third group, who might be struggling with the core concepts, is working with an AI-powered adaptive learning module that gives them a personalized lesson on the carbon cycle, complete with interactive quizzes and immediate feedback. Throughout all of this, Ms. Davis isn't lecturing. She's moving around the room, a facilitator, a guide. She's looking at a dashboard on her own tablet that gives her a real-time overview of student progress. It flags that one student, Johnny, is stuck on a particular concept, so she goes over to have a one-on-one conversation with him. The technology isn't the star of the show, it's the stage. It's the infrastructure that enables a level of personalization, engagement, and real-world connection that was impossible before. That's the classroom of 2025.
That's a very vivid picture. David, when you hear that, what are the implications for equity? Ben describes a technologically rich environment, but we know the digital divide is very real. Will this future exacerbate the gap between the haves and the have-nots?
It absolutely will if we are not intentional about it. This is the single biggest risk. The vision Ben painted is fantastic for a well-funded school district, but what about a rural school with spotty internet or an under-resourced urban school? By 2025, the conversation around the digital divide has to mature. It's no longer just about access to a laptop. It's about access to high-speed internet, to modern software, to devices that can run AR, and critically, to teachers trained to use these tools effectively. This becomes a major policy issue. Treating high-speed internet as a public utility, like electricity or water, is a step many governments will be seriously considering by 2025. We'll also see a rise in public-private partnerships, where companies like Ben's might offer tiered or subsidized versions of their platforms for lower-income districts. But without a concerted, systemic effort from the policy level down, we risk creating a two-tiered education system where affluent students are prepared for the 21st century innovation economy, and others are left even further behind.
I couldn't agree more with David, and I'd add another layer to the equity conversation. Pedagogical equity. It's not just about the hardware. Let's take Ben's example of the AI tutor. That sounds wonderful, but who designed the AI's algorithm? Is it culturally responsive? Does it understand different ways of learning and expressing knowledge? Or is it optimized for one specific type of learner? In 2025, we as educators will need to be far more critical consumers of technology. We have to ask the tough questions. Does this tool genuinely enhance learning, or is it just a gimmick? Does it foster collaboration, or does it isolate students behind screens? Does it empower the teacher's professional judgment, or does it try to replace it with an algorithm? The human element, the teacher's wisdom, and the student's well-being must be the ultimate filter through which all this technology is passed.
Maria makes an absolutely vital point, and it's something we in the edtech industry are having to reckon with. The move fast and break things ethos of Silicon Valley doesn't work in education. You can't break a child's learning journey. By 2025, the most successful edtech companies will be the ones that co-design their products with educators. Our design teams at Innovate Learning now include former teachers, educational psychologists, and ethicists. We run extensive pilots in diverse school settings and actively solicit feedback on bias and pedagogical effectiveness. Transparency is key. We need to be open about how our algorithms work and what data they're collecting. The goal of AI shouldn't be to create a black box that spits out a grade. It should be to provide transparent, actionable insights for both the student and a teacher. It's about augmenting human intelligence, not replacing it.
Let's stay on this theme of the changing roles. We've talked about the teacher as a facilitator or a guide. Maria, can you unpack that a bit more? If a teacher in 2025 is spending less time on direct instruction and grading, what are they spending their time on?
They are spending their time on the things that humans do best. They are building relationships. They are mentoring. They are coaching students on those crucial skills David mentioned: collaboration, communication, and resilience. They are designing interdisciplinary projects that ignite curiosity.
Think about it. In the traditional model, a teacher spends a huge portion of their time on administrative tasks and repetitive grading. If an AI can handle the first draft of grading essays for grammar and structure, the teacher can then spend their time giving meaningful, high-level feedback on the student's arguments and creative expression. If an adaptive platform can drill students on math formulas, the teacher can use class time to run a project where students use those math skills to design a budget for a community garden. The role becomes less about being the sole source of knowledge and more about being the architect of learning experiences. It also means a much greater focus on social-emotional learning, or SEL. By 2025, SEL won't be a separate 20-minute block on a Friday afternoon. It will be woven into the fabric of the school day. How do you handle a disagreement within your project group? How do you persist when an experiment fails? These are the lessons that will be central to a teacher's role. It's a more complex, more demanding, but ultimately a far more rewarding job.
David, this sounds like a major shift in the teaching profession. How does this connect to the future of work, not just for the students, but for the teachers themselves?
It connects perfectly. The future of almost all professional work is about moving up the value chain. As AI and automation handle routine tasks, human professionals, be they doctors, lawyers, or teachers, are freed up to focus on the complex, strategic, and empathetic aspects of their jobs. Maria described this perfectly. The teacher of 2025 is a high-level knowledge worker, a learning designer, a coach, and a mentor. This has huge implications for teacher training and compensation. A one-size-fits-all four-year university program may not be sufficient. We will see more modular, continuous professional development. Teachers will need to become lifelong learners themselves, constantly updating their skills in pedagogy, technology, and their subject matter. And frankly, we will need to start paying them like the highly skilled professionals they are. If we want to attract and retain the talent needed to be these architects of learning, compensation and professional respect have to reflect the complexity of the role. In 2025, the debate over teacher pay will be framed not as an expense, but as a critical investment in our economic future.
Let's pivot to the student experience. Ben, a potential critique of this tech-heavy model is that it could be isolating. How do we ensure that a personalized learning path doesn't become a lonely one?
That is the million-dollar question. And the answer is that technology must be used to drive collaboration, not replace it. The model I described earlier is intentionally project-based and group-oriented. Personalization isn't about putting a student in a digital cubicle. It's about ensuring that when a student comes to the group project, they are prepared and confident because they've had the individual support they need. Think of it like a sports team. Each player works on their individual skills, dribbling, shooting, passing, but the goal is to play together as a team. The technology is the skills coach, getting each student game ready. The teacher is the head coach, designing the plays and making the team cohesive. Furthermore, technology can break down the walls of the classroom. By 2025, collaborative projects won't just be with students in the same room. A class in Chicago could be collaborating on a climate change project with a class in Nairobi. A student learning Spanish can be paired with a native speaker in Madrid for a real-time conversation. Technology, when used correctly, can foster a global sense of community and connection that was previously unimaginable.
I love that vision, Ben, but I would add a note of caution. We must be intentional about teaching students how to collaborate, especially in a digital environment. Digital citizenship will be a core part of the curriculum in 2025. How do you have a respectful debate online? How do you build consensus in a shared document? How do you manage your digital footprint? We also need to preserve space for unstructured, face-to-face interaction. Recess, lunchtime, school clubs, the arts and athletics become even more important in this blended world. We can't optimize the humanity out of school. There needs to be a balance. The school of 2025 must be a place of high tech and high touch.
Let's talk about assessment. If we're moving away from memorization and towards skills like creativity and collaboration, the traditional multiple choice bubble sheet test seems obsolete. David, what does assessment look like in 2025? The bubble sheet is definitely on its deathbed. Assessment in 2025 will be more like a portfolio or a performance review in a modern workplace. It's continuous, project-based, and focused on demonstrating mastery of skills. Instead of a final exam in history, a student might produce a documentary podcast about a historical event, which would be assessed on their research skills, their argumentation, their narrative abilities, and their technical production skills. In a math class, instead of just solving equations, they might use data modeling to propose a more efficient bus route for their city. This is where technology, particularly what Ben is building, becomes incredibly useful. These complex projects generate thousands of data points. The AI can help track a student's progress over time, identifying not just their final answer, but their process. Did they collaborate well with their peers? Did they show resilience after a setback? Did their critical thinking skills improve from the first project to the last? This leads to the concept of a learner transcript or a skills passport. By 2025, students graduating from high school won't just have a list of grades. They will have a dynamic digital portfolio that showcases their projects, their skills, and their competencies, verified by their teachers and potentially through micro-credentials. This is far more valuable to a university admissions officer or a future employer than a simple GPA.
David is exactly right. We're moving from summative assessment, which is a single test at the end of a unit, to formative assessment, which is a continuous, integrated process. The platforms we are building are designed to capture this. When students are working on a collaborative document, the system can track contributions. When they're running a simulation, it can assess their decision-making process. This data doesn't go into a black box to produce a grade. It feeds back into a dashboard for the teacher and the student. The student can see, my research skills are strong, but my data visualization needs work. This makes assessment a part of the learning process itself, rather than a judgment that comes at the end. It's about feedback for growth, not a final score.
This sounds incredibly sophisticated. Maria, I'm putting my parent hat on for a moment. This is a world away from the education system most adults went through. How do we bring parents along on this journey? How do we get their buy-in for a system that looks so different?
That is perhaps one of the most underrated challenges. Communication is everything. Schools in 2025 will need a completely new strategy for parent engagement. The traditional once-a-semester parent-teacher conference is not enough. We'll see more real-time communication. Parents might have access to a version of the same dashboard the teacher and student use, seeing their child's progress on projects and skills in real time. But it's not just about pushing data at them. It's about explaining the why. Schools will need to host workshops and information sessions, both in person and virtual, to explain this new model. They'll need to say, here's what project-based learning looks like, and here's why the skills your child is learning in this documentary project are more valuable for their future than memorizing dates for a test. We have to show them the end product. When a parent sees their child confidently presenting a project they are passionate about, or sees their digital portfolio showcasing incredible work, they become believers. We have to make the learning visible to them and connect it directly to the capabilities we all want for our children, to be confident, capable, and happy lifelong learners.
We're nearing the end of our time, so I want to ask each of you for a final thought. As we stand on the cusp of 2025, what is the one thing you are most hopeful about, and what is the one challenge that keeps you up at night? Let's start with you, Ben. I am most hopeful about the potential for true personalization to unlock human potential. There's so many students who are bored in class because they're ahead, and so many who are lost because they're behind. Technology used wisely can meet every student where they are and help them flourish. It can democratize access to high-quality learning experiences. The challenge that keeps me up at night is the one David raised: equity. If we don't get that right, all of this amazing technology will only serve to widen the gaps in our society, and that would be a tragic failure.
Thank you, Ben. Maria, I am most hopeful about the rehumanization of the teaching profession. I see a future where teachers are freed from drudgery to do the deeply human and joyful work of inspiring young minds. A future where their professional expertise is respected and they are seen as the creative professionals they are. The challenge that worries me is teacher well-being. This is a massive transition, and we are asking so much of our educators. If we don't provide them with the time, training, and emotional and financial support they need, we will see a burnout crisis that could derail this entire vision. We must take care of our teachers.
A powerful and essential point. And finally, David, my greatest hope lies in the shift towards lifelong learning. The model of education we've discussed today, personalized, skills-focused, and portfolio-based, doesn't have to stop at grade 12. It can extend throughout a person's entire career. By 2025, we'll see the lines between K-12, higher education, and corporate training begin to blur, creating a fluid ecosystem of continuous learning. This will create a more resilient and adaptable workforce and society. My biggest fear is institutional inertia.
Our educational systems are like massive aircraft carriers. They are incredibly hard to turn. The technology and the pedagogical ideas exist, but policy, bureaucracy, and a simple resistance to change could slow progress to a crawl, leaving us unprepared for the speed at which the world is changing. The challenge is making the system as agile as the future demands. Ben Carter, Maria Flores, and David Chen, thank you all for an incredibly insightful and thought-provoking conversation. You've painted a picture of education in 2025 that is not science fiction, but a tangible, achievable future filled with immense promise and significant challenges. The vision is clear: a blended, personalized, and skills-focused model where technology augments but never replaces the vital human connection between teacher and student. The work ahead is to ensure this future is equitable, that our teachers are supported, and that our systems are agile enough to make it a reality for every learner. That's all the time we have for today on Future Forward. Join us next time as we continue to explore the forces shaping our tomorrow. I'm Dr. Anya Sharma. Thanks for listening.